You're listening to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast, a place for sex addicts to share their experiences of recovery, to help break the stigma, myths, and misconceptions of sex addiction. This podcast may contain topics of sexuality, sexual trauma, dysfunction, or other things that may be triggering, so listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. My name is Jason, I'm a sex addict, and I will be your podcast host for today. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 167 of the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. This week, we'll be sharing a discussion that we had in mid-July over the proposed wording change of Tradition 11. This motion was brought to the conference in 2024 by the UK Area 54, and Catherine from Edinburgh emailed me last fall and talked about wanting to do a discussion for the podcast on this. Earlier this year, we set the recording date for a Sunday in July. Whenever I have a recording with anyone from the UK or Europe, I have to do it much earlier because of the 8-hour time difference, so the weekends are the best time for me. So we had set aside time on a Sunday for a group discussion on this. Coincidentally, the ISO, they have regular calls called Let's Talk, and I believe those are run by the Area Coordinating Committee, the ACC. And the subject for that one was the proposed change to Tradition 11. So we did that discussion on a Saturday and then recorded the podcast on a Sunday. So we do make reference to that in this recording. So for the beginning of this episode, I did want to read from the Green Book about Tradition 11 as well as from the actual conference motion. So I'm going to start with the Green Book from Tradition 11, and this can be found on page 94. I'm going to read the tradition and the first paragraph. Tradition 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, TV, and films. The 11th tradition serves as a guide to our groups and to the fellowship as a whole in our public relations. It also guides us as members when we are representing SAA in a public capacity or carrying the message to the sex addict who still suffers. In our public relations, we strive to make our existence and our message known so that sex addicts seeking help will know how to find us. At the same time, we strive to protect the anonymity of our members. Our purpose is not to increase our membership, make broad claims about our effectiveness as a program, capitalize on celebrity endorsements, or otherwise promote our fellowship. Instead, we simply offer our program as an option for anyone who is suffering negative consequences from addictive sexual behavior and is looking for help. And as I'm reading this for the intro, I do believe that Catherine also reads this in the body of our conversation. But this serves as a preface to the motion. And you may be wondering that this was brought up as a motion for the 2024 conference, and why are we still talking about this now? So, for changes to the spiritual documents of SAA, that would be the 12 steps, the 12 traditions, the 12 concepts. 12 concepts still haven't been ratified, but is a work in progress. But for changing those, it requires 1 full year of discussion, followed by an affirmative conference vote of 3/4 of the delegates voting at the annual meeting and ratified by 3/4 of the delegates voting in the next annual meeting. Because this was raised in October of 2024 and the following conference was in May of 2025, that was not a full year. So the first voting on this will be in May of 2026 and hopefully ratified in 2027. So there is a lot that goes on in making changes to the core principle documents of SAA. So for that, I wanted to read the business motion and the background information. So the business motion, originating group or representative, Area 54 UK Area Delegate, tracking number 2024 D006. and the proposed motion title, Change the Wording of Tradition 11. The motion: move to change the wording of Tradition 11 to read as follows. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at all levels of public and social media. Background information. The current wording at the level of press, radio, TV, and films no longer has the flexibility to cover the most commonly used forms of communication. SAA based its traditions on AA's short form. The traditions were written for AA by Bill W. in 1939, before the widespread use of television and before the invention of the internet and mobile phones. In 1977, when SAA started, the wording of the steps and traditions were reviewed and considered, and some wording was changed to be more specific to SAA and to our addiction. At the time, it was recognized that TV was widely used and was added to our Tradition 11. In more recent years, increased dependence on the internet and the widespread use of video conferencing platforms for meetings suggests that it is likely that these platforms will be used to attract members as well as to conduct meetings. As we continue to carry the message, SAA will grow and change with the years. Rather than adding another type of communication to the list, changing the wording to encompass all communication on a public level effectively future-proofs the tradition. In 2012, it was agreed that the fellows speaking on behalf of the fellowship remain anonymous at the level of public media. Changing the wording of our tradition in the new editions of our literature would clarify the principle of this tradition for the wider fellowship and will ensure that we recognize the ever-emerging technology around us and would be adaptable to these changes. The principle of anonymity must remain our primary and enduring safeguard. So, with that out of the way, the wording has actually changed for the motion. The next motion will be due in March of 2026. And so there's been ongoing discussion about further changing the language on the tradition. And as it currently sits, it reads, we need always maintain personal anonymity across all public platforms. So on July 19th, we had a very awesome discussion led by Jim L., who shared a lot of background information on how the conference works and the proposed changes to Tradition 11 and what we do for Tradition 11. And with many of the Let's Talk sessions, there were people from across the world on that call. And then on Sunday, July 20th, we recorded the podcast, and this was featuring Catherine from Edinburgh, who was the Area 54 delegate to the conference, talking about the proposed motion. Also representing changes to the motion was Raf from Florida. And we also had Dale from Santa Cruz here in the Bay Area to help out in this discussion. During our recording, a couple of our guests brought up a few musical selections, and I'm going to be using post-production to drop those into the conversation as such. At the end of this recording, I've got a lot of listener email to get to, but some of the listener email talks about meditation music, and so I'll be playing a few music examples from that email, as well as a few others that I had in mind. And yeah, lots of emails coming in for requests for being a guest on the podcast or having a first step shared. And so I will see how many of those I can get to. So without further ado, here is the conversation that we had in July discussing the proposed changes to Tradition 11. As we start off, we were talking about the Let's Talk session from the day before. Here it is. I hope you enjoy.
What I do with the Let's Talk announcements and pretty much anything actually that I get from ISO as the area delegate, I just create them into a single slide, take about 95% of the words out and just create a little link, 50 words, and pop that on the GSR WhatsApp group.
Oh, cool.
So we've got 100 meetings in the UK.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, it's awesome, but we're 48 years old. I think we could do with a few more, frankly.
Yeah.
I know that we have those conversations around our primary purpose. And if we stick to that primary purpose, then we are going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
But the growth ought not to be the goal. And I can see why, because, I could run around a few universities, for example.
Yeah.
Like 90% of you guys must qualify. Come on in. Come on in before you blow your lives up.
Exactly. Yeah, we make our presence known wherever we can, but yeah, you can't really go up to people. Hey, you belong in this meeting.
Yeah. Although a lot of younger people now are talking. I've got three kids from 17 to 28, and the discussions around mental health that they have, I just wasn't having those kind of conversations, 20, 30 years ago. Absolutely not. And talk about addiction and all sorts of different types of addiction. Kids are getting, not when I say taught about it at school, they'll have a class on it,
Yeah.
Mental health, addiction.
My son, we overheard him talking on a Discord server with, his friends, and they have the rules set in place. And some of the things that they were talking about was, bullying and being inclusive for all sorts of genders and things like that. And talking about things that affect everyone's mental health. And it was like really cool to hear that on their own. It's like, whoa, that's awesome. We had some friends over last night and I said, I'm recording a podcast in the morning. You guys got to go. So they just went out to go play. It is a little after 10 a.m. here in the U.S. and we set this up early to accommodate Catherine from the UK. And while I'm talking here, I'm going to introduce everyone. Welcome to say hello. So yeah, Catherine is from Edinburgh and is the UK area delegate.
Yep.
Yeah, delegate to the conference, and we are going to be discussing the motion brought to the conference by the UK Area 54. And before we move on, welcome to the podcast, Catherine.
Hi, good to be here. Thanks, Jason.
Awesome. And we also have Raf here on the podcast. And Raf, we were on Let's Talk ISO call yesterday discussing the same exact thing. And Raf joined. And we found out that we had a common link.
Actually, there's one more thing we have in common.
Yeah?
You were at my first step when LJ presented me.
Oh, yeah.
I broke down in tears at the end. And I you came up to promote the podcast and let everybody know about it. And I got to respond to you, tell you, look, man, I've been listening to all the episodes. It's such a helpful resource. It's been really helpful. But yeah, LJ is my sponsor. So I'm like your grand sponsee.
Yeah.
So
it's so super cool.
Yeah, and it's like I'm in person with LJ too because I live in Florida.
Oh, nice.
So it's like I get to see him like, when he, started attending in-person meetings again, I was the first one to pick him up and take him over. And
that's fantastic.
So now like I get to see him almost every Saturday. Like, we try to go out to lunch together with the group afterwards, but I recently moved, so I haven't been able to do as much. But yeah, LJ is my sponsor. So like the lineage is there.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Raf.
Thank you.
And we also have Dale. And Dale, you're over in Santa Cruz, correct?
Santa Cruz, California, yes.
Yes, and we've known each other for, 15 years at least.
Oh, geez,
something like that. So, yeah, welcome to the podcast. I think this is your first time on?
Yes.
All right. Well, welcome to the podcast. All right. I want to turn it over to Catherine. So the main topic of discussion today is looking at Tradition 11, Area 54 brought to the conference in 2024, some changes to be made to the language of Tradition 11. And right now we're recording the main body of the podcast. I usually record the intros and outros a little bit later, so I will be reading the tradition and some other information about Tradition 11. But Catherine, I wanted to turn it over to you. What Tradition 11 is, what the UK group wanted to change, and where we are now in the process.
So, well, thank you for inviting me along to talk about the Tradition 11 change. The change came about from a discussion that we had in Edinburgh Big Book Study Meeting. And one of the fellows is in another fellowship. And they had been talking in their fellowship about the wording of Tradition 11, which prompted this discussion about our fellowship. And I started talking to a few other fellows in different meetings around the UK. Part of my sponsorship deal, if you like, is I have to make a minimum of 2 phone calls a day. So, and in those calls, talking to other people, and there seemed to be an appetite for it. So, one thing led to another, as it does with recovery, and the discussion. I attend a few different meetings, so raised the subject in group consciences, and it really did seem like there was an appetite to at least have a discussion around Tradition 11. And there was a bit of ambiguity about different people's understanding of what Tradition 11, well, what the traditions were, full stop, to be honest. So anything that gets us talking about traditions, I'm all for it. We just went about the Edinburgh Monday night meeting, went about forming a motion to take to the UK Intergroup. And we discussed it briefly in an intergroup, invited people along to one of the area assemblies, and we worked on it from there. We worked on the wording of the Tradition 11. That would be our suggestion. I don't remember what the original suggestion was, but at the area assembly, we agreed on the original wording that was in the motion. Excuse me, because I'm working off one screen and an iPad that doesn't want to download or update.
While you're doing that, I'm going to read Tradition 11 as it stands right now.
Yes, please. Thanks.
Yeah. So Tradition 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, TV, and films. And so there's kind of 2 parts of the tradition, and we got to discuss both of those parts yesterday on an ISO call, and we'll get to the first part, but it's the second half that is basically going to be up for a vote on changing the way it's worded.
Yeah. So at that first meeting, at the area assembly, when we were agreeing on the wording of the motion, what we'd agreed on was our public relation policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of public media. So that's the wording in the motion. And as I said yesterday, in a programme of rigorous honesty, I wasn't madly keen on that one, so was very happy when a couple of other fellows were willing to share some time, put that out there after the ISO conference, and get together and come up with some other wording. And interestingly, feedback after the motion was that all levels of public media was quite confusing. People were thinking that, does that mean we can't have a WhatsApp group for our meeting? Does that mean that, we ought not to be having Facebook pages? And each group's autonomous. They can do what they want. But this being one of the spiritual principles of the fellowship, if we are going to change this, let's change it to something that works. Yeah, so for us, Raf, I'm not going to speak for you, but, we talked about the level of public media, and we had agreed that, the public platforms, this is about our public relation policy. So the media, we were almost creating another problem because we're not talking about just public media. We're talking about all public platforms. Yeah, I'm maybe going to hand over to Raf.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have anything to add on to what Catherine said.
Catherine, when I think it was the 2024 conference when I first heard this proposal, and, this was something that my area was in complete agreement with. And, I remember when we were beginning discussions about it, somebody even pointed out the tradition. It's like, yeah, I've known this for 15 years. This thing needs to change. Now, I do work in media. I'm a journalist. I've been working in journalism for close to 25 years now. And those items in there, press, TV, media, films, that's completely changed. And I understand, I remember a specific person from that conference says, well, that's everything. That includes everything in there right there. So it works. Now, as a professional looking at it, we don't have that anymore. Like, since basically the late 90s, media has converged more and more. And they no longer really call this like everything is individualized. It's not just television. You're a different platform. Films is a platform. This is social media. That's the newest platform. We are now, as more and more convergence happens where everybody's doing the same thing, they're now referred to as media platforms. I weighed in with that. And yesterday I said that I had two other reasons for doing this. My sponsees are all significantly younger, and they don't really see it as TV, social, TV, media, film, all the different things. To them, it's like, oh, this is streaming. This is this. This is this. And, as we expand it to media platforms or to platforms, that encompasses everything right there. So in a way, it simplifies it. And then we don't have to get into the whole discussion of, does this include social media? Does this include TV, Facebook pages, personal blogs, vlogs, et cetera, because there's so much you can put in there and we would not cover it enough. But platforms gives us that whole thing. So I feel as though we're also doing this in service to these generations that are growing up like this. Like I said, my sponsees all range from 25 to 35. I'd say the one I have that's closest to me in age is 14 years apart. He's had a totally different experience growing up from me.
Yeah.
And I feel like as we do this, we're being in service to this new generation that's coming in there.
Yeah. For me, when starting the podcast, and I talked about this yesterday, I looked at the 2016 Public Information Handbook that the ISO put out, and I believe Litcom is doing something to update that, but a lot of what was in there was basically for print media, letter campaigns, postcards, and such. And I pretty much adapted the language for that into what I do here for the podcast. It's not radio. It's not print media. Definitely not TV and films. But it is getting our information out there to the public. And the reason I started looking at the handbook was looking at being able to use the ISO's Green Book, Sex Addicts Anonymous, without having to ask for permission for each time I quoted something. And they basically talked about in print media how you would use a passage and then footnote what page it came from. And so instead of footnoting it, I just say it verbally. This comes from page 35, paragraph 2, or something like that. And so when looking at this tradition, I kept in mind the spirit of the tradition, even though podcasts aren't called out specifically. Facebook as well, and we can get into that momentarily. But I had to do a lot of research on all of the traditions in order to make this work. And anonymity, I want to discuss that here in a minute as well. So there's a lot of things that are tied into this one tradition.
Yeah. And like another reason I'm in support of the change is like, while everything's based on AA, this makes it SAA's own tradition while still paying tribute to what the original tradition meant.
Yeah. Dale, did you have anything that you wanted to jump in with?
Oh, boy. Well, first, I just really appreciate how you go through principles and very thoughtful on all this approach and not just like, hey, let's wing it. And my first thought was, well, this change makes total sense, so just do it. But it's a good discussion to say, okay, this is why we do it and why we anchor it back to the original wording, because that's kind of where we came from. But where we are now is obviously digital media, social media, and what do we do with that? So yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents worth. I'm just kind of scrolling through the proposal here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm involved with another fellowship that does, with people's permission, on-camera shares. And I disagree with that. And that's not something I would be comfortable doing. So that's just, something that I bow out of when I'm involved there. And I don't know, there's something about having just the audio only of the podcast that makes me able to focus more on the message that people are sharing. And that's the important thing. We're all messengers, but we're carrying the message.
Yeah, I wanted to address the whole YouTube aspect. So we launched the podcast in 2021, and I can't remember how long it was until someone suggested that we put the podcast up on YouTube. Some people don't have access to some of the other ways of listening to podcasts. We do have the podcast player on some SAA websites, including the Bay Area website. And we were talking earlier about the UK website originally had the podcast player there. Looking at different avenues for people to be able to listen to the podcast, and someone had suggested YouTube, and I was like, oh, that's video, and I'm not sure how that's going to work. And so what we decided to do is just use the background logo as the thumbnail, and we're not going to show faces. So I still have guests that are prepared to come on, and is my face going to be shown? And no, for anonymity purposes. Tracy brought this up yesterday. Tracy is the current director of the ISO, and she talked about anonymity includes showing faces or pictures of members. And there's a lot to break down in terms of anonymity, that people were saying that you can show your face and talk about 12-step recovery and what SAA has to offer, as long as you don't say you're a member of SAA. Which was an interesting loop.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. There's a lot going on there.
I'm an expert of something that I'm not a part of necessarily. So I've just observed.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. And for anonymity purposes here on the podcast, several people have used aliases. I have actually drop pitched someone's voice before. The time that I did that for post-production, it took a long time. But now with the new technology, I record on Zoom, and Zoom now can split up everyone's microphone. So I can just do an effect on one person's microphone all the way across and not have to segment. There were a couple parts where both of us were talking, my voice went down, down as well. And it was just kind of weird to hear that. So yeah, we do what we can to keep everything anonymous. Catherine, I wanted to talk about Jim L., who's been on the podcast before, shared a little bit about how motions are made to the conference, and especially for changing the core documents, which includes the 12 steps and 12 traditions, and there may be some other things included there. There are a lot more things than just one vote at one conference. So there's a lot of hurdles to go through. And I was wondering if you can explain how Area 54 proposed the change. I guess there's documentation that you can send in before the conference. And I think this upcoming year, the deadline is March 1st. Of 2026.
Yeah, that was an interesting procedure to learn. Also, though, they have a really good, I think it's 10 or 12 questions that they give you this kind of blank form to fill out, which you get on the service side of the ISO website, which was really helpful in prompting questions that might well be asked by other fellows. Because as a GSR, I've been involved at that on an intergroup level. So on the ISO stage, I realised that what's going to happen is whatever I was putting up there as a motion was going to be interpreted by other area delegates and then trickled down to other intergroup servants and then trickled down to up to the GSRs and then up to the meetings. So I did want to create something that would be easy to understand, I guess, and to attract attention, because I don't think it was ever, but when we got that motion together at the area assembly, there was a real discussion about this might not be the final suggestion for changing the final wording rather for the motion, but let's get the fellowship talking about it. Let's get the discussion started around the traditions, and if we were going to be changing our tradition, what would that look like? So it was more about not rushing it, but to start off the discussion. So, because we did talk about that, should we wait until next year? Shall we go away and have a few more meetings and come up with something else? But actually, what better way to get the word of the fellowship than to invite the entire fellowship to have discussion about it? So, with your permission, Jason, and of course you can edit this out so you can easily say yes, but I'm going to scrap it. Jim L. read out a little piece about the tradition. So with your permission, can I read that out? So from our Green Book, page 76, right at the bottom there, before the 12 traditions of Sex Addicts Anonymous, there's the bottom paragraph there. At every level of our service structure, we are guided by the 12 traditions of SAA as adapted from the 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. Just as the steps teach us the spiritual principles necessary for healthy individual recovery, the traditions embody the spiritual principles necessary for the healthy functioning of our groups. Adhering to these principles safeguards our fellowship, thus protecting the recovery of each individual member. We have found that they also help us to act with integrity in our personal relationships and as responsible members of society. And I thought, wow, when he read that out yesterday, that landed, So anything that encourages us to talk about the traditions, I think, is great. So to finally answer your question, I got the form, discussed it a couple of meetings, and emailed that in, just followed the protocol that really simply guided me through what an area delegate has to do to get a motion considered. So submitted it on time and waited patiently to hear back. And since then, of course, I've now realised there's a little bit more work to it.
Yeah.
than just submitting a motion and just waiting until it happened. And of course, because we've changed the conference to line up with the convention, you were starting to talk about that, so I don't want to jump the gun on it, but Jim L. was reminding us that in order to change the core spiritual principles, documents, the spiritual documents, I beg your pardon, we need 75% vote in favour at 2 consecutive meetings. But we also need that 12-month period for consideration in the fellowship. That didn't quite work out because we, of course, had the 2024, October 24, and then May 25. So we didn't have that 12 months. So, which I think is great because it's allowed us a lot longer to discuss it, So grateful for that. So we have until March 1st, 26 to submit to finalise the wording that we are suggesting be the new wording of Sex Addicts Anonymous 11th tradition.
Yeah, and it sounded like yesterday they talked about wanting to do a couple of more Let's Talk sessions between now and then on this very subject. to allow for more discussion before that deadline. And I remember the original proposed language was, again, basically looking at the second part of the tradition. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, TV, and films. And the original 2024 document was at all levels of public and social media. And that has changed again now, as Raph was talking to, across all public platforms. So the discussion over the past year has given rise to changing the language further. Any thoughts on that? And anyone can jump in.
I'm going to say I think this is going to be something that may continue to evolve because we don't know what the future has held. Like I said, being involved in media and watching the advancement since when I first entered, I remember first entering, we had a very simple computer program that would build articles and tell you how your newspaper article would look. In television, it was beta tapes that were thick and chunky. When you would watch a TV newscast, it's literally there's a crew of people behind the scenes who are throwing tapes into various kind of like video players, and they would have to cue it. That's completely changed now. Now it's loaded clips onto a computer and they just hit a button and the next clip plays. It's now become simplified. So at the same point, we don't know what the future is going to bring when it comes to media and technology. We're hearing all the things now, AI, these virtual reality kind of office spaces we're using, things like that. It's going to continue to evolve. Who knows what it's going to look like in 10 years? Because like I said, over past 25, I've watched it evolve from simple computer programs to a computer program that can basically do everything for you at that moment. I remember it's like back in the day, you had people who would write scripts. You would have people who would write an internet article. You would have people who did these things. Now it's kind of like, okay, well, I can post my internet article on, the script goes into the script place. Here's the video clip. It's become very simplified where I can use one system now to do 4 or 5 different things. So who knows how even more advanced it's going to get with all the technological advancements we have going on right now. So this may end up changing again in the next 20 years. We don't know. I mean, it's a very distinct possibility.
Yeah. One of the things that came up in our discussion yesterday was talking about Facebook in particular, but WhatsApp and other things like that. I know several years ago, I'm connected to maybe 20 or so people in program through Facebook. And we all know that's not anonymous. And so anything that I post there within our group is not tied to SAA. We did create a private group for us, and it had a generic recovery name, and I can't even remember the name. I was trying to look it up yesterday to see if it still exists. But people were posting like recovery resources and things like that. But because of the nature of the way Facebook works, it's not an anonymous platform. So just looking at the way the tradition is going to read, this will include all public platforms. So those are things to keep in mind. And like I had mentioned, that I kept ours very generic, so it wasn't really tied to a specific 12-step program. But those of us that are in the know, we all know how we know each other and things like that. Yeah, I'm not on WhatsApp. We've got a great WhatsApp group with the noon Zoom room, but we also set up a Microsoft Teams community. And so there are all these new things that are viable for us to discuss various things in program. And
like I didn't even know like Teams was a possibility for it, but now that kind of makes sense. It's strange looking at it. I've been off social media for close to like 2 years now. The only thing I really have is kind of a LinkedIn. And I've been off, but I have friends who work in that industry, and listening to them talk about it and see the development of everything, it was just like, oh, do you have Slack? I'm like, yeah. Oh, well, we have this. I'm like, wait, I can use Slack for something. Do you have Teams? And like, another person in the program was telling me something that he can do with Teams with me. I'm like, really? It has that, so again, I'm shocked by the ability of these platforms, of some that I use on a daily basis, and I don't even realize how far it can really go. So it's crazy out there seeing, like, we are all now literally more connected than ever.
Yeah, it's the one thing that, I've really loved and hated about social media is it has connected so many people, but it also keeps us isolated.
Oh, yeah.
So it can be damaging, but I have connected with so many people around the world. Around, my higher power speaks to me through music. And so I have connected with people that I normally would not have due to social media. I'm a huge fan of the band Tool. A lot of people that listen to Tool are also in recovery. And we had a Facebook group going for several years, and it's died out, called Tools in Recovery. And it was all people that were in all sort of 12-step programs. So it wasn't any specific one, but anytime someone wanted to talk about struggles, mental health, triggers, connection with higher power and stuff, we had this really cool group and a commonality of the music that we love, and they have a lot of recovery messages in their music. So I think a lot of people kind of key into that aspect. But there was so many alcoholics, drug addicts in there talking openly about their stuff, and I had this terrible slip. It was actually a relapse, and I talked about what my addiction was. And it was fucking hard to do in social media. It's like, I don't know who's going to see this, but I have a problem with pornography, and being able to say that in a private group, but still recovery based. And I didn't tie it to our specific program, but I said I'm in a 12-step program to deal with my problems with sex addiction. And so
how was
grateful.
That received? I'm curious in the private group.
Open arms. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of the barriers for me were just in my head, and just the embarrassment of saying it is. People have been saying for years openly, oh yeah, I don't drink anymore. I've got a problem with alcohol. Oh yeah.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. I have a problem with masturbation. It's like, why don't you go over there? So it's harder to discuss. And I am a contributor to a lot of other podcasts out there, and I have opened up about my addiction and recovery process on those. And one of them in particular was really instrumental in me starting this podcast. Over the years, I can listen back to those old episodes in 2016 where I mentioned, hey, I've got this idea. And then, a couple of years later, being able to give a status update. Hey, I actually launched the podcast and here's how it's doing. And then doing another update several years later as well. But yeah, all of those things, I do have to keep in mind my anonymity because they are public forums.
Mm-hmm. And I think bears to mind that nothing ever leaves the internet. So with platforms that we don't control, like Facebook, we don't control YouTube either, but we don't use images there. We use the static picture. And how, like Raf said, it's just a one click to do anything. And it is just too easy to be impulsive and shout something out there to the world. It's like, oops, I shouldn't have said that. And it's like, it's too late.
Yeah. One of the things that over the years, especially my, being in media, is we've had to tell, like, a lot of the young people coming in, you need to be careful what you post at all times. Because it will never go away. And, I've heard things from, like, people finding a coworker's photos from when they were like 19, 20 years old. Old tweets from when somebody was like 18, 19 years old. They don't have that maturity level, of not realizing it's forever now. Whatever you post is forever now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm glad a lot of the dumb shit that I did was not recorded, not anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. before touching on the first part of the tradition, I wanted to get back to the actual motion process. So one of the things that Catherine had mentioned is it's 1 year for review and comment for the fellowship for a core document, and then the 75% affirmative vote by the ISO conference at 2 consecutive annual meetings. So is that meaning that the first vote will be 2026? Yeah. And then the second will be 2027?
As I understand it, yes.
Yeah, so I got excited last year that this is coming up for a vote, and it may be changed within 6 months. and just not realizing how in-depth the process is. A lot of the other things that come up for a vote is just kind of a one and done, like the new areas around the world that pop up, Saudi Arabia or wherever. I guess this year, the Francophile and United Arab Emirates. And those were kind of a one and done vote, but to change the core documents does take years, and with good measure, is there's a lot that is involved in this, and you're really grateful for the process. But it's been interesting to see it unfold in real time versus just here's the rules that we have, and it just being kind of this vague thing, but actually getting to see it in process has been really cool.
Just an interesting question for those 2 votes that happened 1 year apart. Is there a quorum that needs to be achieved?
That's an interesting question, though, Dale, about a quorum, because I don't know. Mm-hmm. I've been at 3 conferences now, and they've been well attended. The last 2, there was that motion this year to change the voting, that they were going to take away the votes from some of the trusted servants, which I thought was an interesting question. But I'm sorry, I've lost my track.
It was basically the motion that the Litcom and the board would each get 1 vote instead of all the board members getting a vote, or something like that. There's something that passed, I believe, at the last conference, 2024, could have been 2023, that looked at the percentage of regular meeting delegates versus ISO trusted servants, the ratio that has to be. And I think they've been able to maintain that since that passed. But as far as a quorum goes, I think they know how the proportions are supposed to be for the ISO board committees and LIDCOM, et cetera, versus all of the others. And at least persons like myself, I was able to attend via Zoom, and I'm really grateful for that. When the conference was in October, it's always right around my wedding anniversary. So my wife said, no, you're not doing that. When it changed back to May, I got the chance to be a delegate, but it was too late to get airline tickets and hotel stuff. So wasn't able to go in person, but with the ability to jump on Zoom, that elevates the level of attendees at the conference. So we do get enough people there to be able to vote on things.
I think that was at 50, 55. I want to say 55, 58, something like that. The areas represented. Well, areas and voting members, trusted servants.
Anyway, I did want to, before we close this out, talk about the beginning clause of the tradition, which talked about attraction versus promotion. And this is something that we talked about yesterday on the call as well. And a lot of people's misunderstanding of what that means. I had Philip B on the podcast on episode 101, and he is our public information and cooperation with the professional community. It's a mouthful. PICPC. He's the chair for that group, and getting our message out to the public is very important. So we don't want to just isolate and not mention that, we are available as a place for recovery. So the attraction part is putting the message out there. This podcast is one of those avenues. We do a lot of campaigns to get our information into the hands of therapists out there that can recommend that to their clientele. I know in the Bay Area, we've done things where we've dropped off information at police stations, at community centers, to give awareness that our program is out there. And that is the attraction part. Promotion is saying that SAA is the only way that you can recover from sex addiction, that we have the answer, and you that person over there, you have to attend. And that is the promotion aspect. And so Philip goes into a lot of details around that, but there's still, at this conference, I talked about the podcast being a public platform to get our information out there. And someone private messaged me and said, attraction versus promotion. And I was like, it's out there for attraction. So no, you're promoting your podcast. I'm just like, no, that's not what it is. You read the Green Book, read up on the tradition. It says that, we do need to make our presence known. And so with the changing technologies, I'm not on Instagram or TikTok or things like that, but I'm sure that there are going to be new waves of younger members of our program that want to get that message out there. And so having this new wording being inclusive of getting our presence known out there to the public is important. So any thoughts on the attraction versus promotion?
Yeah, I do. I have lots of them. Way more than the last couple of minutes will allow. I did want to share yesterday, we had the first face-to-face Intergroup in the UK for a while. So it was hybrid. So there was people joining online. And we've got a PI CPC servant in the UK, chair. And yes, he spent a lot of time and put a lot of thought, consultation with other fellows into his motion, and we have yesterday approved digital leaflet for sharing on Instagram, and it is just simply green background, Sex Addicts Anonymous, and the website address. Letting people know that we exist is carrying the message to the still suffering sex addict. Yes, if you're already here, you know this exists. I was 47 years old and I had never heard of this. People know about, my children in high school know about Alcoholics Anonymous. They now know about Sex Addicts Anonymous. But this is going to save lives. Letting people know that we exist now. It might be that, what is it? We grow where we're planted. That seed that's planted today will make a difference to somebody 10, 15, 20 years from now. So I think it's imperative that we do get an understanding of the difference between attraction versus promotion. Philip B came over, came over on Zoom, and he has patiently and kindly shared that workshop at least 3 times for the UK. It really is a game changer. We're not a secret society. And the difference between attraction and promotion really will, the understanding of that, the understanding of the tradition will save people's lives. So, yeah, there you go.
Awesome.
And I think, Jason, you qualify things very well in your podcast in saying, views are those of the participants. And just reiterating that for several different levels throughout and saying, hey, we are sex addicts, but this is the person's experience, strength, and hope. And that's just theirs.
Yeah, I was going to say traditions 10 and 11 just come up constantly for me with the podcast. And just being able to have personal opinions on things. And some of those are outside causes and issues, but they are not outside causes and issues for Sex Addicts Anonymous. It's this person's view. And I do make that distinction. I do edit out a lot if it goes over the line. And I've had to reel in some comments made on some recordings. But for the most part, looking at those, that they are indeed the views of whoever's on the podcast. I do have to put in that disclaimer that I put there at the end. was one of the things that I found in the public information handbook. They're saying, I think it was basically, again, for print media, that you have to post that these do not reflect the thoughts and views of the ISO. And I also tagged the Bay Area Intergroup, since I'm the chair of the podcast for the Intergroup, but I don't speak for the entire body of the Intergroup. So anyway, yeah, there's so many things to be able to discuss about the traditions. Yeah, I did have Darren F. on the podcast, and the Taking Action group in McKinney, Texas. We went through all of the traditions and got to discuss these at length. And I noticed he was on the call yesterday. I was hoping he would join us here today, but I'm really grateful for what we're able to do today. Anyone have any closing thoughts? I usually try to keep the recordings to about an hour. Sometimes I have recorded for 2 hours and have had to do a lot of editing. I don't have a set time, so we're approaching an hour of recording and wanted to go through everyone if they had any other thoughts of things that we haven't discussed.
I don't have any thoughts, but I do have a song suggestion because I'm a big fan of the program.
Yeah.
And actually, it's funny because it was something in like what Catherine just said about planting kind of reflects on that. You want me to tell it to you, or did you want me to wait and you can go around to everybody else?
Yeah, why don't we do that? And then
we can come back. I can't be on the podcast without suggesting a song to you.
Awesome.
Because I'm a big music nerd as well. Like I actually just set up my shelf this morning for my vinyl records.
Nice.
And then I realized I'm probably going to need 2 more. So
yeah, Dale, why don't we go with you?
I'm impressed they still make vinyl records.
Oh, yeah. Vinyl's making a huge comeback.
That's wild. Yeah. It's just amazing. And, we say we're grateful to AA for these steps and traditions that make our recovery possible. And who would have thought giving addicts like us keys and money, and we do recovery. I mean, we get keys to the meeting rooms that we go to, and we collect money, and we actually carry the message and do this thing that we would not do on our own.
Awesome. Catherine, do you have any closing comments or things that we haven't touched upon?
I'm laughing because I'm now thinking, hi, I'm Catherine. I'm a grateful recovered sex addict. I didn't say that at the beginning.
Hey, welcome.
I did not say that at the beginning. Gosh, you're talking about music, and I'm thinking, I wish I could remember the name of the song, but I don't remember the name of the song, but the words, the lyrics are, we thought this day would never come. Yeah, for me, I didn't think this day could come, but I didn't even know it was possible. It's recovery that's given me a life way beyond anything I could have hoped for. Funnily enough, I've just this month turned 7. So I am truly a grateful recovered sex addict. Thanks, Jason, for your work. I am a listener. I'd forgotten about the music thing, so I'm kind of kicking myself for not having the name in the group. But one thing I would say about the Tradition 11 is, for us, this really does seem like an incredibly important discussion, at least a discussion to have in the fellowship, and often enough so that newcomers get to hear it. We do act out on public platforms. We are a different fellowship than others, and I will always be grateful to AA for my recovery, but to be fully self-supporting and autonomous and to grow, I think we do need to look at this. As someone said, made a really interesting comment yesterday. If we had a tradition that said public platforms, would we be having a discussion to change it back to press, radio, TV, and film? No. Al-Anon was the second 12-step fellowship, and they changed it. They added TV. Which I thought was really interesting. So changing the traditions is not unusual. Bill's wife did it. So I don't think we're going too far off centre to bring this tradition up to date. Do we always have to change them? Who knows? I have no idea. But I think this is at least time for a big discussion. So thank you, Jason. And thanks, Dale and Raph.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So back to you, Raph.
All right. Yeah, like I think this change is definitely worth the discussion. I think it's, if we're not having it now, I think it would eventually be had in the future. The world is changing and evolving at one of the fastest paces we've ever seen. And how we relay information to each other has changed. And it's definitely something we need to take a look at. And like I said, one of the conversations I had, was discussing this with a friend of mine who was not in favor of the tradition. And he said, we don't need to change it because it works. And I agree. I mean, it works for me, but I'm not trying to think of myself right now. Like I said, I'm looking at these younger generations, and, change is one of the things that we go through in the program. While I get that this works, like I said, to me, I think of the future. When I'm thinking of those younger people who are entering the program. I'm thinking of my sponsees. I'm thinking about other young people who are coming into this program who don't recognize these ideas. And, as we work the steps, we undergo a big change. And I think we also have to be current with these traditions, and we have to evolve them in a changing landscape of how information is not only given out, but received as well. So I think that's definitely worth discussing. And like I said, if we aren't having this now, I'm thinking it will definitely happen in the future. So why not be of service to those who are not even in the program yet, that we're giving this to them.
Yeah.
We're also making this our own. AA has given us a lot of things. They've given us, the inspiration of the steps, the inspiration of the traditions, but there's no rules that we can't take what they've given us and adapt it to our own. And, those are the reasons, I'm in full support of this, motion. And I know my area is in support of the motion. This is something that I received, every group when they saw this gave me a yes.
Yeah. So I know that we've been working for years on adapting the 12 concepts, and currently we're still using the 12 concepts of AA because the SAA ones are still evolving and have not been conference approved yet. So that's an ongoing thing. The Green Book is getting a major rewrite. I guess it comes up every 10 years. For a rewrite, and I've discussed on several podcasts that a lot of the information is kind of outdated, especially around gender issues. There's a lot that can be changed there, and they're updating the stories. So there's some stories from people who came into program after the turn of the millennium. A lot of the stories were written in the 90s, and didn't have a lot of new ways of acting out.
The chair of my home group, he's in Litcom as well. He's one of the recent additions this year. And, one of the things that, I serve as the GSR to my group, and I try to remind them, hey, Green Book is looking for stories. We need the younger people and I tell them, we're looking for things involving internet, computer, like this. We want to modernize it, social media. While there's some hints at it in the current Green Book, I think especially with the way the world is now, it'd be much more impactful to have those modern stories in there.
Definitely. So yeah, in the show notes for this episode, we'll try to put the link for submitting stories to the Green Book. And Catherine, is there a good way for people to get information to the UK Area 54 in terms of their thoughts, if anyone has ideas on the proposed language? And we will be discussing this between now and March 1st, which is the deadline for the next conference.
Yeah, they can either go through info or through the ISO office. I've received a number of emails that have come from Cody in the office, but they can also come directly to me. My email address is areaassembly@saauk.info.
Awesome. And I will put that in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
Hey, wait, can I give you the song?
Yeah, sure.
So, after my relationship had ended, I was playing this CD in my car a lot. He's kind of like a bluesy folk singer. His name is William Elliott Whitmore. He's actually like a punk kid from Iowa. Well, older punk guy now. Who lives on this farm in Iowa, and he records these like great country and bluegrass songs. And one of the first times I had met with LJ after my relationship ended, he met me for breakfast, and I was playing this song for him in there. And I was like, this is totally a recovery song. It's called Bury Your Burdens in the Ground.
If you got burdens, don't carry them, just bury them in the ground. And if you're hurting, don't worry, I'll try to be around. How long can the night time last? How long can it be? These sharp-toothed creatures from the past gonna be the end of me. Oh, let the sun come up. Feeling good wasn't good enough, and I bid farewell to this living hell.
Awesome.
And like I said, the guy's name is William Elliott Whitmore. So if I ever get on this podcast, I'm going to pass it off to Jason.
Awesome.
Jason, I remember, I've got it. It's New Order's True Faith.
I feel so extraordinary. Something's got a hold on me. I get this feeling I'm in motion, a certain sense of liberty. I don't care 'cause I'm not there, and I don't care if I'm here tomorrow. Again and again I've taken too much of the things that cost you too much. I used to think that the day would never come. I'd see the light in the shade of the morning sun. My morning sun is a drug that brings me near to the childhood I lost, replaced by fear. I used to think that the day would never come, that my life would depend on the morning sun.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Can I share one more thing with you? And this
Yeah.
This was a big honor to me. So, obviously, like LJ came back to you a few months ago. So he came to the group and he did this first step. And because you weren't there, he asked me to fill it in. So I consider
nice.
that a big honor for me that I got to step in with you. And also it was kind of like this really cool full circle moment that I realized that morning. Like, I'm stepping in to introduce him because his sponsor's not here. But at the same point, his sponsor was there for my first step.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like a really cool moment. So I just wanted to share that with you because
awesome.
It really meant a lot to me to introduce LJ at his group. And obviously I've heard his first step on the podcast, I've read the books, but it was a real big honor for me to introduce him and filling in for you as getting to introduce him. So that was one of the big honors I've had in this program. And
awesome.
It made me extremely proud.
That's so cool.
We have this really cool little like orbit of each other all.
Yeah. Yeah, I spoke, I don't think it was an Edinburgh meeting. I think it was a bit north of Edinburgh. I spoke at, I spoke at one of their meetings early on in the pandemic. So I got an invite to be a speaker. It wasn't on Zoom. It was a different conferencing service, and it was really cool to be able to join.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I can get you into a couple of other meetings here.
Yeah.
When I was over in at conference, I got a couple of numbers of people. Let's use Zoom to do these shares. Is in person better? Yes, I think it is. But how would we be doing this if it wasn't for Zoom?
I know.
Yeah, your podcast's often shared. Links to it are often shared on the GSR WhatsApp group and the WhatsApp groups. Yeah.
Because it is Bay Area SAA, you can share them at meetings and stuff.
Yeah, 2018 I came in, and there was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. I could get AA shares coming out my ears.
Yeah.
But there wasn't anything for me to listen to that was my addiction.
Yeah.
You know, and now there is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's some, I don't necessarily recommend looking up sex addiction on YouTube, but yours is right up there. You type in Google search, fantastic. That's what people are getting when they're searching. Brilliant.
Yeah, my wife came up with the name.
Yeah.
She's great at search engine optimization. We wanted to call it the meeting after the meeting, and no one would be able to find it.
Yeah.
So I think we first called it the Sex Addiction Recovery Podcast, but we wanted to focus more on the addict rather than the addiction. And so it's addict stories.
I like that. That's a good part of the story.
It also gets people searching for Sex Addicts Anonymous. Yeah, several people on YouTube and Spotify have just been searching for stuff, stumbled on the podcast. So, oh, shit, there's an actual program, and I've gotten to meet several of those people.
You know what? One of the things I really like about the fact that it is called the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast is the fact that it's called Sex Addicts. Where is the shame in that?
Mm-hmm.
The shame is in here. You know, someone else pointed to their head earlier on. You know, it's like, that's where the problem is. No, get it out of there. We've talked about in the UK getting involved in things like university open days. We call them Freshers' Weeks. And you'll have a Cocaine Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous stands. Let's have sex addicts there as well. Now, I might not want to do it in Edinburgh because I wouldn't mind, but I wouldn't want my children to be embarrassed by something like that. But let me go 500 miles south and I'll go there, you know, and vice versa. That reciprocity amongst the fellows. But to have the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast called that, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, definitely. You know, LJ promotes it every time he's in the meeting. It's like any, announcements for the good of SAA. And he reminds everybody, he's like, the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast is there. If you ever need a meeting at any time. And it's there. And we've actually included it as a tool in our newcomers guide as well.
Awesome. Wow.
Oh, that's a great idea. Thanks for that one, Raph.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Anyway, I am so grateful for all of you joining here today on the podcast. And like I mentioned that at yesterday's Let's Talk, it sounded like they were going to try to do another one or two of these before March. And so if you are interested in that, please check out information at the ISO. And with that, I'm going to close out this episode and thank you all for joining me.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. All right, thank you,
Jason.
Take care.
Right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Many, many thanks to Catherine for emailing me about this a long time ago. It was really funny seeing her first email and knowing that she wanted to talk about this, but was also nervous about coming on the podcast. And we had such a blast. I also wanted to thank Raph and Dale for joining us. We had such a fun time talking. We actually recorded for another half an hour after the recording ended. And through the miracle of editing, there were some real great tidbits of information during that section. And I decided to chop that up and move that into the body of the conversation. One of the sections that I moved back was the song discussion. So I was just going to be using the song titles to play at the second half of the episode, but I really loved hearing the story about the songs and thought that I could just chop that up and put it into the conversation. And yeah, those songs were awesome. I hadn't heard William Elliott Whitmore before, but really love that. And yeah, I'm a sucker for bluegrassy type of stuff and super cool song. And yeah, with the New Order, I have a bunch of their music already. And so I already knew that one and was really grateful to share that. And earlier in the conversation, Catherine had mentioned the lyrics, I Thought This Day Would Never Come. And I'm so glad that she remembered the title of it. A couple of other things. I did finally remember the name of the Facebook group that we started for recovery, and it was called From Shame to Grace. And so those of us in the know knew exactly what that meant, but to outsiders, they wouldn't have a clue. And before moving on to emails, I did want to mention that I will be providing Catherine's area email if anyone has any further comments on the changing of the wording of Tradition 11. And I will also try to find the link for adding new stories to the Green Book. So those will be in the show notes. Thinking of Catherine, she sent an email about a week after our recording. And as I move on to emails, I thought I would read hers first. It says, "Hey Jason, thank you very much for your time on Sunday. I was very grateful that you would make a convenient time for the recording outside your usual hours. Of course, there are things that I wish I had said and didn't. Never mind. Someone told me there is always 3 shares, the one that you want to give, the one that you give, and the one that you wish you had given. I guess the same stands for guest appearances on podcast recordings. The service you provide is very much appreciated. I guess you see the numbers of listenings, so you know that already. Bye for now. In service, Catherine." And to that, I have not replied yet, but yes, there's always things left unsaid. And so I would welcome Catherine to come back here on the podcast and actually have a conversation about what got her into the rooms of SAA and other things that she wanted to say. So an open invitation to you, Catherine. Yes, like I mentioned, we had such a blast and carried on the conversation for a while after our actual recording. So a lot of fun. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Another one here from the UK, and this is from someone with the initial M. And says, "Hi Jason, I hope this email finds you well. I'm an addict in recovery, and I've been with SAA or ASA for almost 2 years. My life became completely unmanageable. I hit rock bottom, and after 20 years of continuous consumption of pornography and fantasies, I've had a huge impact on my life. Now I'm happy to say that I've been clean for almost 2 years, anniversary on the 8th of October. I've been so lucky with my sponsor and community, and I'd love to share my experience in the program, the ups and the downs and the continuous struggles. Thank you ever so much for your show, and saved my mind and soul many times. Kind regards, signed M from London." So yes, I'll reach out to you. There are several people that I owe some emails to in terms of scheduling, and I will be off of work for 2 months after my hip surgery, so I'll be scheduling some before and some after my surgery. Yes, I will definitely reach out to you. I'd love to hear your story. And I did get a request from someone who wishes to share his first step anonymously, similar to what we did on episode 166. And I'm going to have Ben S. read that one as well. And most of the details in the email are not really for sharing here, but I did want to mention that one. So I do have that actual first step, and I'm going to be sending that on to Ben to record. And so that will be a future episode coming up. This one just came in yesterday. Got a lot of M's this week. "Hi, Jason. I'm M, a sex addict in Texas. I've been in the SAA program for 10 and a half years. May 2015 was my entry date. And this program, with the steps, foremost, the fellowship, and the meetings, has been the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. I'd love to come on your podcast, but my sponsor reminds me that my motivation for doing so should not be done to please others or gain status, which, as much as I'd love to share my experience, strength, and hope, there will always be a part of me that would do it for pleasing and status gaining. Oh well." I've recommended this podcast to my area intergroup members, sponsees, sponsor, accountability group members at the meetings I attend, etc. And to a T, no one had heard of it. I didn't hear about it until 6 to 9 months ago, and I believe this is the origin story. A fellow sent it to me via a gratitude text, and boy, I'm grateful that he did. I currently have a little over 5 years of sobriety. May 31st, 2020 was my last acting out date. I've worked the steps twice in SAA with 2 different sponsors, one using the Big Book and 12 and 12, and the other using ACA Ways. After working the steps the first time in here, I joined AA in May of 2018 and also worked the steps and 7 years sober there. I can go on and on about my acting out. The ice underneath the iceberg for which I never resolved, addressed, or healed from, which ultimately led to acting out. But what the 12 steps of SAA have done for me is restored me to the person my higher power made me to be. And to see that the 11-year-old M, who said he wasn't enough so he should create a whole different persona through lying, grandiosity, cheating, stealing, etc., and is precious and lovable, worthwhile, and intelligent, which I never believed for nearly 20 years. I came to SAA single, and now I've been married for 5 years. I have one son with another to be born in the next 2 months. And all of that ice underneath that iceberg has been identified, shared, grieved, healed, and is being rebuilt with the principles of the program through the loving, safe rooms and fellows of SAA. My one experience to share is the answer for me to gain and keep sobriety first, foremost, second, and third through working the steps in order with a sponsor who is something that I want. It's like wanting to play golf but hanging out at the club, riding along with others, getting a membership, reading golf magazines, etc., but never taking a lesson from a golf pro and playing many rounds of golf to improve your game. I've tried for the first 9 months when I came into the program to not be rigorously honest. And then after working the steps, I tried for almost 2 years to try everything but reworking the steps with a new sponsor. Each of those times, my sobriety was inconsistent and it bugged me to no end. Different meetings, different meditation books, more willpower, a different therapist, and on didn't work in totality. The only thing that has worked to me was working the steps with the sponsor in order to the best of my ability. Both of my longest stretches of sobriety, 19 months and now a little over 5 years, came as a direct result of step work with the sponsor who had something that I wanted. Off my soapbox, thank you for your service, for sharing others' voices, and may God bless you, this podcast, people who listen to this, and the Bay Area Intergroup. Best, signed, M. And yes, really grateful for this email. And yeah, I do have motivation checks from time to time, especially doing like guitar videos and things like that. But yeah, getting our experience out there into the world and sharing it with others is such an awesome thing. So despite whatever your intentions are, I think you would be an asset to sharing your experience here on the podcast. So I'd love to have you as a guest, and I'll be sending you an email as well. So the last one that I have here, this one came in from another emailer that we shared some music from, and this is Ben. Previously, I had referred to him as B. So on episode 165, I shared some of his music suggestions from his playlist called Absolute Treasure. And so I got a new email about episode 54, which was all about meditation music. And says, hey there, just listen to episode 54 on meditation music. And I have to say, I go a very different direction in terms of what I like and what helps me connect with a sense of serenity and being in the present moment. Most of the music Jason shared either brings me into sadness, depression, anxiety, or disquiet because of the minor keys, disharmonies, or tone colors used. Psychologically, I need harmony, major keys, a sense of consonance, and stillness in my meditation music. It just goes to show how many different ways people can connect with their higher power. Some of my favorite meditation artists fall more into the ambient soundscape camp. Ether Valley, We Dream of Eden, Be Still the Earth, Dear Gravity, Anita Tatlow, Antarctic Wastelands, etc. My Spotify meditation list, if you want to explore further, is called Stillness. And yes, there are quite a few songs on this playlist. I also do walking meditation. I just go for a slow walk around the neighborhood and take in sights, sounds, and sensations, usually with no headphones. I literally stop and smell the roses or pause to look at spiders, bugs, or bees. I love guided meditations sometimes as well. One of my favorite guides is Sarah Blondin. Somehow her voice and words speak to me as I imagine a divine mother would, which is something the hurt and scared, pure and innocent child inside me needs. Yet another aspect of my higher power. Thanks so much for doing the podcast, and feel free to use anything in this email. Signed, Ben. And yeah, there were a lot of different tracks here. I'm going to play a couple here and probably use a few others on some other episodes. But yeah, before naming those ones, yeah, I did want to say that, yes, my musical tastes are vastly different than a lot of people. Going all the way back to episode 9, when I talked about finding a higher power in music, I talked about Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor, and how Tool's music is mostly written in D minor. I find minor keys really interesting, and they just soothe and calm me. So I've just been watching the Netflix show Wednesday and thought that there was a parallel here. Some folks are like Wednesday's bright, bubbly roommate Enid, who loves lots of color and uplifting music like K-pop, while I tend to fall into the darker goth side of Wednesday's character. In terms of weather, I find peace in thunderstorms, wind and rain, rustling leaves, things like that, whereas most people would prefer a nice, bright, sunshiny day. So my sister and I were kind of like that growing up, her on the more poppy and mainstream side and me into the heavier, darker stuff. So Ben perfectly said we have lots of different types of music that gets us connected. And I love to share all kinds of music here on the podcast and love learning about new bands. I too go to a lot of uplifting songs in major keys, especially with like ska and funk for some like pick-me-up music. For episode 54, I wanted to show that all types of songs could be used for meditation beyond just ethereal soundscapes, which I absolutely love. Most of the music that I use for meditation falls into either a drone type of category like throat singing, didgeridoo, soundscapes, etc., or repeating pattern types of music, whether that's in a major or minor key. There are even a few black metal songs that fit into that second category for me. So back to Ben's stillness playlist, these ambient soundscape tunes fall into the realm of drones for me. And so, yeah, I did want to play a couple of tracks here. The first one listed here was Red Decay by Be Still the Earth / Ether Valley. And another one by Ether Valley called Soul Shimmers. Yeah, it's real interesting to see that a lot of these are like combinations of groups. So Antarctic Wasteland / Ether Valley and the song Solar Spaces. And I'll play one more here. This one is called For the Wandering by We Dream of Eden. So yeah, I love this type of stuff. One of the tracks that I played on episode 54 was a Tool soundscape that they used for a live performance. I was able to recreate that using Garageband, and a lot of times when I get certain patches on there that is spacey and lots of reverb, I can have fun just holding down a key and letting it drone for a bit and then move on to another key. And I have no idea what I'm doing, but it sounds just like these ambient soundscapes, and love just messing around with GarageBand and coming up with things like this. So it's great that you've got a whole playlist of this stuff. So I did have a few things that I wanted to play as well. And going back to episode 30, which I pulled, I replayed the songs on a bonus episode, but the song by Heilung called Filia Yar and the following track, Futhork. I played on that episode the live version, but I used the studio version for meditation. There's a lot more sections of just ambient instrumentals. When the vocals start to come in, sometimes that pulls me out of the meditation. But yeah, I just really, really love this, and it's got a nice drone to it. So since that was on episode 30, which is no longer available, I wanted to play that here. One other one from the most recent release from Heilung. This is from the Liefe Jotengard, and the song Noropu. It had an extended intro that was an ambient soundscape with some throat singing, and so I wanted to play that section of the song here. Awesome. Yeah, Heilung has been on my mind a lot lately. They're playing their last performance for a few years as they take a hiatus next week in Sweden. And a lot of my friends are going. I've got the FOMO going on. I really wish that I could have been there for that. Also, I did want to mention this past weekend, a program friend's band was playing in town, and went out and saw that and had a lovely night of music. Great upbeat ska and funk. I got to meet the bar manager there, and he was wearing a Heilung shirt. And so he and I had an instant bond. And so this random night of just going out by myself and checking out music and really connecting with the music and my higher power and getting to meet new people. And it was such a fantastic evening. I had two more songs that I wanted to play. And the first coming from the artist Devin Townsend and the Devin Townsend Project. And I played his song Addicted on episode 9 of the podcast. It's much, much heavier. He's got a mellow side as well. A lot of his mellower songs have a lot of reverb and ambience. And this song, Fly, is just a beautiful, floaty song for me. Here it is. Awesome. And yeah, he's got so many albums out there under different monikers, but this one is actually called the Devin Townsend Project. The last song that I wanted to play is an uplifting song, and it is still very meditational for me. It features the Didgeridoo and a band called Nomad, and I do believe that I talked about them on an episode where I talked about my spiritual mixes, and this song is on one of my spiritual mixes. And it's a song called Gathering. I just love the vocal arrangement for this and the upbeat vibe of this while still having a very energetic didgeridoo. The didgeridoo is giving that drone throughout the song, but instead of slow and mellow, this one is upbeat, and I can meditate to this one all day. This is awesome, uplifting, and a major key. Love Nomad, and I hope to share some more of his music on future episodes of the podcast. Yeah, there were so many other songs coming to mind, so I'll probably do another meditation music episode, including a lot of the tracks here from Ben's playlist, and if anyone else wishes to provide ideas for an episode on meditation music, please feel free to email us. And if you wanted to do that, you can reach us at feedback@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. You can comment on any particular episodes or any of the music that we played, or if you have any that are part of your particular recovery process, please let us know. So if you want to be a future guest on the podcast, like several of our emailers here, I've got my work cut out for me. You can always reach me at jason@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. So for the next couple of episodes, I did have a conversation with an emailer about a month ago, and I'm going to be using that one for the next episode. We also had a first step that we recorded, and again, we're going to be recording a first step story that someone sent in. And I will be scheduling a lot of new recordings coming up very soon. I'm so grateful that you tuned into this one. And as always, keep coming back. The views and opinions contained in the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Bay Area Intergroup or the ISO of SAA.